self-awareness is something that I lean pretty heavily on. And it's not just the internal self-awareness, it's understanding the perception of you too. And in just navigating the investment world for as long as I have, um, I've seen the bucket in the box that people put me in, and it's not capital allocator. So as we were ideating around this thing, we wanted to make sure we could build it around our skill sets in a way that we never want to misrepresent who we are, but we do want to put ourselves in position to really leverage our strengths.
Welcome to Mitlin Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
What does it take to go from an overlooked NFL draft pick to a Super Bowl champion and then build an empire in business? Marques Colston knows. He mastered the art of earning success every single day, and now he's taking that championship mindset into entrepreneurship, financial strategy, and executive coaching. He's helping businesses and communities break down barriers, build wealth, and redefine what's possible. If you want to think bigger, lead stronger, and win in every aspect of life, this is the episode for you. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Welcome to the show, Marques Colston. Yeah, so I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Marques Colston, founding partner of Champion Venture Partners. Really excited, and I know our listeners are for this conversation, Marques.
I appreciate you having me on, and definitely looking forward to diving in with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, our listeners are really fascinated by the entrepreneurial journey and sharing that a lot of times very similar, sometimes different at the same time, but there's a lot of commonalities many times also throughout them. So we're going to spend a lot of time on what you're doing today with Champion Venture Partners. But before we do, how did you get up to that, point of your life? What led you to this entrepreneurial path that you're on today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I've been in and around this venture capital ecosystem for the last 15 years. So I played 10 years as a professional athlete, played with the New Orleans Saints. So if you're counting the math, there's a lot of overlap. So about halfway through my career, I kind of started to dip my toe in the water and eventually got comfortable enough to just cannonball in. And Champion Venture Partners for me represents the last 15 years of, various stops, from investor to advisor to consultant, to financial advisor. At some point right around 2020, I went and got my financial licenses, my Series 7, Series 66. Did that for a few years. Have taught as an adjunct and as a program director at Columbia Business School. So for me, Champion Venture Partners, it represents an opportunity to take a lot of really random stops along the way, and drop them into this platform that allows me to really invest and lead a platform that's investing at the intersection of sports and business and technology, in a way that is slightly different than most investment firms, and really lead with value add and operational excellence, and really just build a platform in an industry that I know well and have built a lot of really cool skill sets around my role as an athlete.
Yeah, great stuff. And I listen, I think there's a little bit of irony here, considering we are recording this the day after the Super Bowl in 2025, which was in New Orleans, your hometown, and where you were successful as an NFL athlete. So, real quick, what were your thoughts about this year's Super Bowl?
It wasn't as it was pretty one-sided, man. Was hoping for a better game, but you know, I think a lot of people that saw the Eagles play all year round. I mean, there was a lot of splitting hairs around, trying to figure out the flaws in that team. Pretty consistent across the board, offense, defense, special teams, and it showed up on the biggest stage, and that's all you can ask for as a competitor. You want to bring your best to the biggest stage, and they kind of ran away with it.
Yeah. And I think, in the instance, you to be the best, you have to beat the best. And, I think they truly showed that this year. So, one of the things we'll now circle back to you and what you're up to today, right? I've heard you say that you got an MBA on the fly, right? What do you mean by that?
So in a very literal sense, I had to choose my executive MBA program that I started. This was probably 2011. So I'd enrolled in an executive MBA program. At the same time, I was actually running a indoor football organization, and it got to a point where I literally had to decide: do I continue to stay on this school pathway, or do I actually go and run the business that I'm running? And I decided the latter. I decided to kind of stop, and I hate to use the word dropout, but I moved away from my MBA program and just dove 2 feet into running the organization that I was running at the time. So when I say I mean it very literally. I learn how to operate a business, learn how to lead from the front. Was really responsible for everything from football operations on game day, assembling a coaching staff, assembling all of the pieces to make sure that the football operations could run. Everything from selling sponsorships to ticket sales to marketing, game day operations. I had the headset on. I'm running, making sure we got the TV timeouts and everything. So it was really truly an opportunity for me to go and do the things that I was learning in the classroom. And for me, that was important in building confidence, because I was still actively playing at the time. And you run into a lot of people that feel like you can't do both, and they try to tell you that you can't do both. So for me, having that opportunity to really learn, boots on the ground, rolling my sleeves up and kind of getting dirty a little bit, get my hands dirty. That was my opportunity. So I did that for 3 years, and made me feel less bad about walking away from the classroom, because I was walking right into what I was supposed to be learning anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you probably still got a great education. It just didn't happen as formally, right? And I think that's the important thing for people to remember.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as long as you're learning and growing, that's the important piece. It doesn't necessarily mean how you're learning and
Mhm.
growing. Some people do that in the four walls of a classroom, and other people not so much. They're better doing it in the day to day, like you were doing. And I have to ask you, having the foresight that you did, right, to start on this entrepreneurial path or even this just business path overall, still while you were playing, right? Where did that come from? Because you don't find that many times with professional athletes. I think you're a little bit of an anomaly, and I know there are others like you, but not everybody has that foresight. They think they're going to play forever, that this is going to be a continuous income stream. So, what drove you down that path to kind of explore outside of what you were doing day to day in the NFL?
So my entry point into entrepreneurship and really thinking about life after football while I was still in it is twofold. One, I was seventh round pick, and for those of you that don't follow football closely, seventh round is the last round. So I was the fourth to the last pick of the entire
Still got drafted.
Yeah, 1,000%.
It's like, what do they call the guy who's last in his class in medical school? Doctor.
There you go. So, coming in, I understood the odds were not in my favor, right? There's getting drafted. When I got drafted, there was, I think, a 1% chance that I would be on a roster in my rookie year. So I came into the league in a situation where the exit door was already a little bit closer than I wanted it to be. And then on top of that, I was just really fortunate to have two really good advisors that were former players themselves, that always pushed me. They saw something in me, and they always pushed me to kind of get out of my comfort zone and try new things. So the combination of those two things is what ultimately got me into angel investing in the first place. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that I had this grand plan around becoming an investor, but ultimately I got into angel investing because that's what all my peers were doing at the time. And for me, getting into it was where my eyes were open, just because I was able to look at and relate to a lot of the entrepreneurs that I was investing in, and a lot of the entrepreneurs that I was working with. And I was able to see a lot of my journey in becoming a professional athlete. Starting in high school as an unheralded prospect, trying to go and get a scholarship offer, get somebody to believe in you enough to give you a scholarship offer, played 4 years, kind of under the radar, did the same exact thing, trying to get an NFL team to believe in me enough to draft me. And when I was able to see that journey and map it to the entrepreneur's journey of building something, innovating around an idea or a concept, building it and trying to get people to believe in it and trying to get people to invest in it. When I was able to connect those two worlds, it opened up the business world in a new way for me, in one that I could see myself in it, and I didn't feel like an outsider just trying to figure it out. I felt like somebody who really understood what the entrepreneur's journey was, and it allowed me to lean in a different way and be more vulnerable because I could see that trajectory and that pathway was one that I was already walking in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so much similarity I feel like you just mentioned between being a professional athlete and being an entrepreneur. Very, very lot of similarities. Let's fast forward to today, right? How are you leading with influence at Champion Venture Partners? Because I know that's something you speak about very often.
That's an interesting question because I tend to think about impact, right? And I tend to try to be intentional about impact. But the thing that I used to do for a living gives me a lot of influence, right? So for me, it's about what are the doors that my past can open, and once I get through those doors, how can I kind of shift gears and take that influence and take that opportunity and that door that's open and use it to create impact. And a lot of what we've built at Champion Venture Partners, there are sports investment firms out there. So what we do is not technically different than anyone else. We pull capital and we invest it in strategic opportunities that we want to grow over time, and return capital to our shareholders. Very black and white business. It's how we do it and who we do it for that makes us a little bit more unique. So part of our vision and our mission is around access. Sports investment is an asset class that has only really been accessible to the top 1%, the billionaires, and the deals that they're invested in are all big four, big five league teams. So what we wanted to do is create an investment platform that not only invested across the sports value chain. So we want to be in teams and leagues. We also want to be in sports technology. We want to be in sports medicine. We want to be in real estate, hospitality, all of those things that the picks and shovels that kind of make sports what it is. So we want to be in a more diverse set of assets that we get a chance to invest in. But we also have created a platform that opens it up for a broader pool of investors.
Right.
Right. So we have a platform that we can pull capital from institutional investors all the way down to retail investors. They can all be a part of the cap table, all invest in this more diverse pool of assets. So that's how we kind of take the influence and convert it into impact, and that impact for us is creating accessibility.
Yeah, really democratizing that and the ability to invest. And
Mhm.
one of the things I know you talk a lot about, is something in your works is you have an abundance mindset. Very much so, very similar to me. And we also talk about how sometimes 1+1 can equal 3. It doesn't have to equal what we've taught in math class, that 1+1 only equals 2, because if you're given the right two ones and you put them together, it could really be a 3. Can you explain that motto which you use for your fund?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in a very tactical sense. We want to invest in companies that truly build a portfolio. We don't want to just invest in isolated companies that, although that strategy can do well, we see the benefit in investing in company A, because we know that company B can kind of create a high tide effect, right? So we truly kind of take an ecosystem approach to where if we're investing in a club or a team, we want to invest in technology and sports medicine and all media that can create interesting returns on its own. But the ability to take that portfolio and now embed it into a team, now you have built-in business development, you've got built-in sales, and you've got built-in ability to um, have one transaction kind of create this cascading effect across the portfolio. And that's truly how we look at investing, kind of with that ecosystem lens. And that's how, ultimately we want 1 + 1 to equal 5 at some point.
Right. Yeah, that'd be even better than 3. Yeah, for sure. Now, you're not the only professional athlete or former professional athlete that's in Champion Venture Partners. Your business partner is Nick Edwards, who's a former professional MMA fighter,
Mhm.
and he's a physiologist for the Colorado Avalanche, my sport, hockey, and the Denver Nuggets. How did you guys come together? Because it seems like very different sports, if you will, or professions from the get go.
Yeah, so I've known Nick for about 6 years now. We initially met kind of in another world. So he had a physiology platform that he was working on. I had a sports tech platform that I had found and it was building out. And we actually connected initially around trying to partner our two companies together. Right. So kind of going back to the 1 + 1 = 3 mentality, our initial conversation was around how do we create that 1 + 1 = 3. So over the years, we've just, built a relationship and built a friendship. And at some point, we just kind of started to have this conversation around a broader conversation around investment. Because of him as a former athlete, we've seen very similar things with our peers. We've seen, athletes kind of continue to get pulled into these deals and get pulled into really kind of the same monolithic role, which is you're always the influence or you're always the endorser or the brand ambassador. And, the way that we met was in a very different world. We were operators at the time. And we just kind of started to ideate around what could it look like to stand up a platform that reposition athletes in a way that, we were able to use our operational expertise. We were able to step into, more of a leadership role as opposed to, that front facing ambassador role. And that's really how the idea of CBP got started. And once we landed on that idea, that's when we started to really hone in on, how can we solve for the challenges, the unique challenges of the athlete investor and the athlete entrepreneur in a way that, created a liquidity, created access to liquidity, created real operational roles, real meaningful, ownership and access. And once we landed on that, the aha moment was, if it works for the athlete, it also works for the retail investor, because they have very similar challenges around, just getting access to meaningful deals, getting access to high quality deal flow, potentially needing, a vehicle that has some liquidity, because not all of us can have our capital locked up in a VC fund for the next 10 years. Right. So, ideating around the challenges within our peer group quickly became, solving for, challenges in the retail investor group. And that's truly, we kind of started to build a platform around that thesis and around that vision. And we've moved moved pretty fast, but that was our origin point. Just building solutions.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. And one of the things that you guys, I guess, collectively together, you decided that you wanted to be a value-based investor. Why did you want to go down that route?
I don't own any sweater vests. No, I think, so self-awareness is something that I lean pretty heavily on. And it's not just the internal self-awareness, it's, understanding the perception of you too. And, in just navigating the investment world for as long as I have, um, I've seen the bucket in the box that people put me in, and it's not capital allocator. So as we were ideating around this thing, we wanted to make sure we could build it around our skill sets in a way that we never want to misrepresent who we are, but we do want to put ourselves in position to really leverage our strengths. And us both being operators, us both being roll your sleeves up and add real value to companies type of people. That was the investment thesis that we rolled out with, and we've been very intentional with building our team, with operators, so that when we step into a company or we step into a firm or a conversation and say, we're a true value add firm, it's a whole lot more than just, opening a Rolodex and making a call to an advisor. It is, can we step in and help you, develop a business development strategy, because we've got this deep network, of, sports team operators and sports team executives that we know are looking for the solution that you provide. So, a lot of it was just understanding how we would be perceived, particularly in the financial world, but taking that perception and really leaning into our strengths to offer up something new to the marketplace.
Yeah, you're probably not just going to throw money at these companies. You want to throw money in operational excellence, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely, because it's a different way to de-risk,
Right.
right? So most firms that are they kind of have that shelf life. They have that 7 to 10 year shelf life that a lot of firms have. They allocate the capital and they're just kind of there to maybe direct traffic and play air traffic control. What we know is that by investing our capital and then investing our operational expertise behind that, you give a chance, you give the some more ammo to the company to grow, but you're also actively kind of de-risking the investment in real time.
Right. Great. Yeah, you're right on there. So, one of the things you've talked about quite a number of times is, focusing on leading with access, not having this just available to that top 1%, but really democratizing the ability to invest in these areas. How do you, how do you think you're delivering on that? And is it just simply lower minimums or bringing it to other areas of the country? Like, how are you delivering on that to make sure that you're not ending up in a position where you're just having those top 1% as investors in these companies and not spreading it out across, that whole access pool that you spoke of?
So there's a handful of ways that we're being very intentional. One, you hit the nail on the head. Lower minimums, right? There's only a handful of people on earth that can come in and cut a minimum $10 million check to get into a on the cap table of a team, right? So this pooled capital, this fund structure allows us to there's a specific vehicle that we use that allows us to get to not just accredited but also non-accredited investors, right? So you're able to get to a different you're able to get to people that are maybe in a different financial situation, a different socioeconomic situation. So you pair that with lower minimums, and you're automatically opening up a broader pool. And then the ability to get into an asset class that people know and recognize is really important to us. We always talk about sports being one of the few things that unites us all, right? We just started. The Super Bowl was yesterday, and we just kind of wove that into this podcast because it's one of those uniting forces, right? So what we also know is that most of us at some point are investing into the sports ecosystem, whether we're fans, whether we're players. Right now, I'm a former player that has two young kids that are in the travel and the club ecosystem. So I'm paying into that. So there are a lot of people that are investing into the ecosystem, whether it's blood, sweat, tears, or their capital, and there just aren't a lot of meaningful ways to extract capital back out of it. So, our ability to take lower minimums with a broader investor pool, combine it with an asset class that people know, recognize, and trust, gives us the ability to create that access to where, we are very intentional about making sure that it's not just the 1%. And in doing so, we also take on that responsibility in creating a new class of investor in a lot of ways. Education is really important to us because we want to make sure that the people that participate with us, the people that want to participate with us, know exactly what they're participating in, and can become more informed and more astute investors as they go along.
Yeah, and become advocates for your funds. That's
Absolutely.
great. Yeah. So, one thing that makes you interesting is you're kind of on both sides, right? You have that entrepreneurial piece and you have that mindset, and you also have that investor mindset. But I think to some degree, and we'll see if you agree with me or not, a lot of times there's some, differences between being a entrepreneur mindset and being an investor mindset. What do you see those differences being?
I think the biggest risk between those two is just your appetite for risk. I think as an entrepreneur, by default, you're very comfortable with risk. And as an investor, and particularly as a capital allocator, risk is the enemy, right? So I think that's really the place where, for as much as they're two sides of the same coin, I think the perspective and the lens that you view risk is really the biggest differentiator.
Interesting. And who, in your view, who do you perceive has more risk, the entrepreneur or the investor?
The investor has more risk. The entrepreneur takes more risk.
Right.
Um, I think the investor, in a lot of ways, you are truly, as much as you're investing in that concept and that idea, you're investing in that entrepreneur's ability to pull it off, and that's kind of where you lose control. You know, that's where you lose control. And for the entrepreneur, they're always in control, but ultimately they've got to be in a position where they can never be comfortable and they can never be content with where they're at, because they got to continue to grow. So by default, you've got to continue to take risks, hopefully more calculated risks, but you got to keep taking risks to keep growing.
Yeah. And the investor, I mean, their risk is only money. The entrepreneur, it could be their entire life in terms of money and everything that they've worked for at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different world. When you kind of put everything into the company that you're building, you're 100% right. The best you can hope for is the losses that you take become lessons that push you forward, and you hopefully no flaw is a fatal one.
Agreed. So someone who has also earned the gray in their beard, you and I, what has this journey taught you? What are some of the big takeaways for you, Marques Colston, from this journey that you're on?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is something that I've already known, is just kind of made me lean even deeper into it, is that concept of being self-aware as the ultimate discovery tool. Because I just think back to my entry point into this VC and investing world as somebody that didn't come from it at all. My first exposure was as a 23 or 24-year-old professional athlete. So my ability to kind of grow, not just into the space, but grow into myself as someone that's moving through the space. That's been the differentiator for me. And in getting comfortable with myself, it's given me the confidence to create a platform like this that is not it's not the cookie cutter fund, it's not the cookie cutter firm that we're building. So that ability to be self-aware, understand who I am, understand what's important to me, at the same time understand the perceptions, and then kind of using the delta between those two to formulate a strategy. That's kind of been that's been the guiding light that got us to this point.
Right. Are you seeing any particular like increased interest in certain areas that you guys are working in versus others? Like if you had to say, this is the area that's garnering, I should say, the most attention right now, for those entrepreneurs out there listening, what are those areas that are really garnering the most interest for your investors and for those that are looking to raise capital perhaps too?
One of the themes that is has been there for a while, but it's starting to take a different form, is the team ownership piece. So you're starting to see more and more of these fractional ownership platforms that are giving, specifically in European soccer. You're starting to see more and more of these platforms that are going to kind of a crowdfunding type of model that are giving fans access to fractional ownership. You've even started to see some platforms that are giving fans the opportunity to invest in future earnings of their favorite player.
Right.
right? So I think this idea of ownership within sports is kind of changing and shifting. So that's one area that we've seen a lot of interest in. And then the other area is just, there are a lot of emerging sports. I think, entrepreneurs are seeing the opportunity to create live content and seeing the value in live content. And they're understanding that sports in a lot of ways is truly like the last form of appointment viewing that there is. So you're starting to see a lot more of these emerging sports and these emerging leagues pop up, and they're competing for eyeballs. And I think as the linear networks get more and more competition from the Netflixes of the worlds and the streaming platforms, the Amazons, as there becomes more competition at the top for the big five media rights, I think you're going to see some of these emerging leagues land some pretty significant deals with traditional players that kind of strap them into a rocket ship and watch them go.
So are you saying I should take the gray in my beard and go really work on my pickleball game or what?
It wouldn't be a bad idea. You won't find me out there, man. My Achilles is too important to me right now.
I don't know. The league is coming. The league is coming. So we'll see. But yeah, great stuff. Thank you for sharing that. So, listen, our listeners love the final question that we ask each of our guests, because this is the Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy, and people come here to listen about people's joy. And the final question we ask all our guests is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
It's going to sound like an oxymoron, but I tend to be an early riser, and Mondays, I still work out pretty heavily, and Mondays are my heavy day. Mondays are my leg day. That's when I get on the treadmill and I put in, 3 or 4 miles. And it's a long week. I spent a lot of time down in New Orleans last week, so I was pretty tired, this weekend. So it was a little harder to get up this morning, but I was able to get up, get my workout in, put my miles in. And it's just always a really good feeling to get that, put the hay in the barn, so to say, and be able to start the week on a good foot. So got my 4 miles in this morning and feeling really good about the outlook for the week.
All right. My quads are hurting just hearing that. So you stick to the running. I'll stick to taking up pickleball, I guess.
There we
And
go.
we'll take it from there.
There we go.
But listen, Marques, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, learn more about Champion Venture Partners, what's the easiest and the best place for them to go and do that?
Yeah, our website at Champion Venture Partners is just championventurepartners.com. We're also pretty active on Instagram. Our handle is CVP Invest, and you can find us on LinkedIn pretty regularly as well. Personally, you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. And my website is marquescolston.xyz.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for sharing. And, we'll have to see another great, football season. I'm sure you're looking forward to the next season as well. But I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, sharing about Champion Venture Partners, and, enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, I do appreciate you having me on.
What an inspiring conversation with Marques Colston. His journey from underdog to champion, both in sports and business, is a masterclass in resilience, strategy, and leadership. Marques, thank you for sharing your wisdom on building wealth, breaking barriers, and leading with purpose. If this episode fired you up, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs this mindset shift. Until next time, keep pushing forward and chasing greatness. Marques Colston and Champion Venture Partners can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mitlin Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Mitlin Money Mindset show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Guests on the Mitlin Money Mindset show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.